Y'all ready to go? Good. All righty. We'll call this meeting to order, and in advance, thank y'all for the work that y'all put in on the budget thus far. Deeply appreciative of it.
Thank you.
We'll give y'all the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Thank you for being here on a Thursday morning to do this. And yes, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge all the work of our staff getting us to this point, because this is certainly not a town manager only effort that gets us to where we're at right now. Heather's been an integral part of revenue calculations. It really helps us to stay on track to, we think, put an accurate projection of revenues. And then also in this budget, because of, you know, the challenges of the amount of expense requests versus what our revenue picture looked like, Heather also helped me in identifying some categories, and then I went in there, and I normally don't meet with department heads before the recommended budget. It's usually after we have this meeting, and I kind of let them know where we stand if you make any changes. But I got in and met with them beforehand because there was more cuts than normal. But Heather helped. We tried to categorize them into like general operational ones, which could be the line items like departmental supplies, travel, etc. One to capital, and then one to personnel, which could be COLA, merit, position reductions, which thankfully we didn't have to go to that point on this. So overall, I think you'll be pleased with what I'll recommend to you here and present. So we've got a bunch of documents here if you want to follow along. Obviously, I'll be going through hard copy-wise the big presentation here on the operating budget, and then we also have behind that the capital improvement budget, which is much fewer slides. You also have in your packet, this is a report that we do, we normally have with it, and it has the approved budget for the current fiscal year for comparison, where we're spent year to date on the line item, and then the next column's what I'm recommending for the line items within the departmental budget. So that's another document to help you follow along. And I'll try and point some of these out if we get to some key places. And then we've got the revenue spreadsheet, so that helps if you want to refer back to what is the total amount, because in some places I'm saying what it's increased by. And then behind it, a little more detail about the different revenue line items. And then I think the last thing was in conjunction with the CIP. I do like it's a word version and a narrative describing, you know, what CIP is, and then the two categories with debt service and capital projects. And lay that out. So you've got all those goodies in front of you, and if that helps, you take it from here. If you have questions later or want to talk about it, you have that. And with that, unless there's any questions and issues you want to bring up right now, I'm going to jump right into it and get us moving along here in the presentation. So obviously this will be our fiscal year 2026, 2027 budget meeting. So that's the budget we're working on. We're currently in the 2025-26 budget. So as a kind of overview, some high-level stuff here. I'm presenting to you a balanced budget. I have to present a balanced budget, which is basically means the revenues and expenses balance. The total budget that I'm presenting to you is $10,531,353 in revenues and expenses. You got your monitor going?
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep going.
And then, so basically about $500,000 increase as compared to our prior FY '25-26 budget, just over 536,000. So our proposed tax rate, and I've given you a heads up on this, will increase. We've been at 28 cents for a number of years now per $100 of assessed value. This new rate will go up to 29.5 cents per $100 of assessed value, so 1.5 cent increase. 17.5 cents of what, if you approve the new rate, 29.5 cents, goes to support all the town administered services or our departments. And then the balance, if you approve the new rate, the fire department's portion of that 29.5 cents would go from 10.5 to 12 cents. So 1.5 cent increase just to our contracted fire protection services with Fletcher Fire and Rescue.
Do you know what the county's going to do? Because I know
You
they're
know,
always trying to match.
That's a good question.
Because if they do a penny, then we would go to a penny.
I meant to ask them because hopefully they're mirroring that they'll, my understanding is that I think they're asking for the 1.5.
They are. I didn't know if the
Okay.
county. I know Chief Griffin says if they go to a penny, he's going to come back to us and say, we need to match it. He's going to reduce his here too.
Yeah.
So that's why I was kind of curious what the county.
I have not heard, but we need to
Yeah.
follow and ask. I know it goes through that FRAC, the
Yeah,
fire.
FRAC committee,
yeah.
I forget what the acronym stands for, that committee that hears all the
Mm-hmm.
district fire department budget requests. So, and it seems like most times if it gets reported favorably out of there, the
Yeah.
commissioners go along with it and they don't go with something different unless, I don't know, for whatever reason, there's a lot of pushback to
Right.
keep it at a lower rate. So my guess is it would go up, but yeah, we can find out what the latest, I don't know if it's gone to that, to the FRAC yet.
But this would be the worst case scenario. if the-
Yeah.
I think they've all presented to FRAC, but I don't know if FRAC has turned into the county
Okay.
yet what they
You
would.
think they've had that meeting? We can check with, like Jimmy Brissy, I think, is the point of contact, and find out. But yeah, that's a good question. I was thinking that the other day, and I hadn't reached out to them to find out, or asked Chief Griffin if he knows or has a feeling on it. We can check with like Jimmy. But, you know, part of the hard thing on that is, I mean, we'll probably get a decent idea, but you always have to give the caveat that they've recommended it, we're hopeful, but it's not a done deal, you know, until they say they're okay with it and they vote on it, obviously, at their June meeting.
Right.
Yeah, so, yeah, that would be our recommended rate. And, you know, and I know I drafted that letter to our legislators yesterday, and I sent it to you, if we wind up sending it to them on the whole property tax issue with the legislation they're looking at. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought, what I was going to say about that. We sent that to them, and we're not sure what's going to happen with that, so I don't think it's going to impact us in this current fiscal year, but that it could be something into the following fiscal year about, you know, what happens with our rate. Do we stay with what y'all are comfortable with approving? So, you know, we'll see. There was another point that'll come to me about the letter. So other things on overview of the 26-27 budget. Most of our increases, you know, obviously based on the 1.5 cent going to Fletcher Fire and Rescue, most of them are for fire protection services. And I'll talk a little bit more on some of the things out there later, but it's, you know, Fire Station 3, which is the Naples Station, and Fire Station 2, which is the Hooper Creek Station, need improvements to basically get those facilities up to where they should be. And I don't think they're getting quite the level of FEMA assistance as far as the damage out at Fire Station 3 to get it to where they they feel comfortable it should be at. The fire department, is also in need of additional personnel and equipment to maintain service levels. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Health insurance for our town employees, we already talked about, we took a pretty good hit here on increases. We've been very fortunate in recent years here that we haven't had either any increase or only a small one with our health insurance premiums. And that's because we've been, under this grandfathered non-ACA compliant plan that is ended. So, we're not receiving that benefit from it. This budget also includes an upgrade in one position, our part-time planner to full-time planner. We used to have a full-time planner years ago, and kind of got downgraded a little bit coming out of I think it was out of the recession from 2008, 2009, when that happened. And it was a cost-saving measure, and we've managed, but there's more demands on planning and zoning now, and it's beyond just reviewing site plans and issuing zoning permits. They do code enforcement too, and then the whole MS4 permit, the stormwater permit for the stormwater quality compliance measures. So yes, upgrading the part-time planner, I'm recommending that in here. We did cut some other things out in planning that I'll get to later. Most of the remaining expenses are for personnel costs and capital items to maintain our operational efficiencies. I like to give a little bit of an overall economic outlook, and that's looking from a national perspective to state and then to us locally here. Yes, Mayor, I did make sure you agree.
I'm already laughing about it.
Because it's having worldwide ripple, and it is. I mean, not to make light of anything going on over there, but it's. I can give you the other stories, just other peculiar things that are all being impacted by that. It's more than 30% of the oil and gas can't go through there. It's affecting other products that people rely on for construction and. So anyways, our projected GDP growth, or that's gross domestic product, which is, many of you know, is a measure of growth in the economy. So for 2026, initially we're looking at something a little bit more robust at 3.2%, but now due to the national conflict and kind of some of the uncertainties on that, I think economists have lowered that to more the 2.3% range, which is not terrible, but in a more healthier, robust economy, you're more in the threes, and so right now there's just a lot of uncertainty with that. The GDP, just for comparison, has averaged about 2% over the past 2 years. We had inflation coming down, and then now I think a lot of the things going on with the international, with Operation Epic Fury, or the war with Iran, is impacting, obviously energy prices, fuel. So yeah, the Strait of Hormuz being closed has had a major international ripple effect on the economy. It's impacting all kinds of things, and so we're hearing daily about close to a deal and opening it up, but really, truly, hopefully, they get to some, even if it's some short term, until they can work out a long-term truce agreement plan, that gets opened back up, because it's having a lot of impacts. I mentioned some about inflation a few minutes ago, but inflation is remaining higher than anticipated, so our energy, our high gas prices is impacting things. We haven't increased our fuel line items here, and I guess right now we still feel like there's enough room in there. We've been under budget on those, so it might be a little tighter, but, we think there's enough space in there to still cover. Plus, fuels, the price goes up and down so much, and now with the whole international conflict deal going on, they could drop back once they get the strait opened back up, back down considerably. So, so looking at the state, it's interesting with the state. We are a great state for business and economic development. I mean, we've seen it over the years in Henderson County and Fletcher, but I was at the Industrial Executives Forum last week and hearing from the director of the state's Economic Development Partnership for North Carolina. And this is the second year in a row North Carolina was ranked #1 for doing business. And why is that? Reasonable tax rates, high quality of life, a lot of work to incentivize or lure industry into the state. So it's been a collective effort that has really put North Carolina in a good position. So generally, state economy is still kind of outperforming the national one. And I'd say we're more impacted by what's going on in the state right now a little bit than the national stuff. Hopefully that'll continue that way. So yeah, there's some good economic development stories out there. And the last thing, population growth. North Carolina continues to grow population-wise much more than some of the other states in the country. We've been a net in-migration state, which means we've got more people moving in than are moving out. Texas is one you've heard about, Florida, but there was some data I looked at that from 2024 to 2025, more people were moving from other states to North Carolina than any other state. That's big, especially with, all the people leaving California going to Texas and Florida. Some of them come to North Carolina. And so that's been, that affects the economy, and that affects us, and it does have a trickle-down effect to our economy, even here locally. So those are some important things going on in the state from an economic development perspective, or just the economy. As far as some local economic factors, we still have residential growth going on here. Not a ton, but I know we can look out the window here and that they're still doing, they've had some issues with some of the site improvements, and so it's going back. I'm pointing towards the landing at Meadowview project right now, or the BSC Holdings is doing. But we had the two major subdivisions, and they're not all built out. I believe it's Authors that's still under construction. I think Heritage Park is done. But two significant single-family home developments. So that's going on there on Rutledge Road. They total between the two 150 units. The landing at Meadowview, which is the one I was pointing to out the window here, that's 299 units. So that's impactful. And then we got that new development out on Bernie Mountain Road that's 21 units. That's one that Tyler's mentioned near Bernie Mountain and Hoopers Creek Road. So, there's mostly single family, some multifamily stuff happening. The landing at Meadowview here next to Town Hall's a little bit more on the multifamily side. It's apartments, townhomes, single family home villas, but still a large development. So we still have a decent amount of activity on the residential side. And then there's also that apartment complex component of the development on 25. the Carson Weisgood development there. So, and it's mixed use. There's going to be commercial in the front. It's not all residential. You saw Caribou Coffee's coming in there. So we've got some, still a decent amount of residential growth happening. On the commercial industrial side, not a lot to report. Our existing industry here seems to be doing well overall. I mean, there's some doing better than others, but we don't have any plants leaving. We did have the one new one I mentioned in your high-vis, so that was one you just did the public hearing for some incentives based on their capital investment and jobs that they create. And they just made their announcement, and, they make the lighting for emergency lighting for emergency vehicles. I'm not sure on which types, if it's ambulances or police or other, but, so that was a good, exciting announcement. And they're going in Fletcher Commerce Park at the end of Continuum Drive, and they're going into a building that's been tough to lease and, or, keep an industry or business in there. And I'm hoping they'll be in there for a long time. They're going to do some renovations, and I think there is some room to expand that building. Yeah. So that's a really good one. I wish I had some more to mention, but again, Fletcher got a very strong industrial manufacturing base here, and it's really important to our tax base to keep a broad tax base. Retail sales, so sales tax, is our second largest source of revenue. For the last couple of years, we weren't hitting our base budget, which was, that was impactful. And I've been here 20 years. Almost every year we've had at least a decent amount of growth. Maybe in the recession, I think it went back down below. But typically, retail spending's been strong through the years, and we've had growth. The last couple years, we've had a hard time hitting our base budget on it. This year so far, we're on pace, and
we did bring it down this year.
Yeah, but
we're meeting our
right. So we're meeting it, and we follow when we do our projections. Some of the information we get from the League of Municipalities, that they help us with some of the modeling on it, on projected growth based on what they're seeing. Of course, we have to look at our local economic factors, but we think there's going to be some growth, and you'll see it in the revenue line item in the general fund for sales tax. So that's good news in this, especially since we don't have a lot of growth in our property tax base. So getting into revenue outlook, as you know, we get our property tax value projections from the assessor's office, and our new one that we're hoping to receive here, and they generally, please keep in mind, they go very conservative on this. And also, we'll have one more in May projection for the values. So there may be a little bit up from this, and then I try and plug that in, and it's some usually just minor adjustments. But right now, the projected increase in our property values is from $1,917,433,000 to $1.9 billion, so $1,943,351,000. So, not bad in there. It's like 1.6% or 1.5%. The largest portion of it, there's different components of that property tax base, but the largest portion, and you've got that in here too, if you want to look at the three. It's behind the revenue section. It's that spreadsheet we get from the county. It's color-coded. Green is the final column, and it's where lectures on the bottom of this spreadsheet looks like this. So you can see the breakout of the different components of what comprises our values for the property tax base. So if you look at that, the largest portion of the increase is from real property values, and real property values are land and improvements, so land and buildings out there. Business personal, which is the second largest source that makes up our property tax base, that's like machinery and equipment with businesses. That's decreased by 3.13% right now. Which is not good, but we will get another set of values in May. So I'm hoping that'll come down, the negative part will come down, and we'll get a little more value in there, we'll see. Because they do, the assessor's office has to process these listings, and it takes a long time, and a lot of the businesses will ask for an extension, so then that just further delays their processing time. So I'm hoping that'll improve a little bit, it may not by much. And then individual personal property values, so that's like if you have a boat, RV, mobile home, that increased by 7.14%. And then the last part of it is, well, there's one other, public service, which is evaluation on like utility infrastructure, the big utilities. I think that was flat. And then motor vehicles, which is another important component of the property tax base, increased by 2.55%. So overall, not bad, not great, but could be worse. And again, we're just a year removed from Helene, so like some of our ones are impacted with the flooding. They may still be coming back from that. Like Minetti was doing really well, but they were one of the businesses over in Industrial Park that had water in the building. And then we had Raffletech. So Raffletech has two locations. They have one in Fletcher, and then they have one in Mills River. The bigger one's in Mills River, but they've moved out of our Fletcher location. So we'll get another, hopefully decent or comparable manufacturer.
You think that's where some of that business personal went?
Yes, I bet that did. Yeah, I would not doubt it. That's a little bit about all our components on value-wise on property taxes. So getting into like our levy, how much actual revenue came in on that, and then they got sales tax on there as well. We had a 7% increase. That sounds like a lot, additional $360,720 in real and personal property taxes. But that includes the 1.5% increase for fire. You back that out, I think it was like 2% of our growth. So, what does a penny produce right now? It's you're producing about 192,000. We're netting roughly on what a penny produces on the tax rate in revenue. That a good chunk, but that in our property tax levy, but a lot of that is that 1.5 cent increase. Moderate increase here, our additional $54,556 in the vehicle taxes. So that was just another one to point out how much does the levy produce that's that increase. And then jumping into sales tax, that third bullet on there, which again is our second largest source of revenue to the town. Very important. An additional, so growth there, $165,687. So, and we still, when Heather digs in really deep on the projections, looking exactly where we at to date, what the league thinks will finish end of the year, and then percentage increases into this fiscal year we're working on. We try and go conservative on that every year and trying, more towards the bottom end of what they're projecting. And for the most part, that's played to our benefit. we've either hit budget or gone over it for sales tax revenue. So that's been helpful from year to year. The last couple of years have been a hit, but, and then the last bullet, and this is a little bit of an accounting thing, but the sales and use tax refund, we have to budget. So like nonprofits, when we make expenditures that have sales tax in it, we can claim a refund for the sales tax on there. So we had to budget that in at $55,000, but it is, it's revenue we get back. So, oops, unless there's any questions on that, I'll go into the next slide. And let me just say, I guess, linger on sales tax. On the whole emphasis right now on property tax reform and making changes to limits to how property taxes can be levied and so forth from the General Assembly to us. Maybe we look at in trying to push more flexibility for the sales tax. And I think that's one that, and it's one that sometimes people call it a regressive tax, which means it hurts people more who make less money. And technically it is, because most of us in this room can handle, for our sales tax purchases, it's not quite as big of a deal, a higher sales tax, but obviously if you have a lot less income, the sales tax impacts you more. But it takes it off of these people who own a lot of land and them carrying, or, property carrying so much of that tax burden too. It takes a little relief off of that. And businesses that are paying property taxes. So I don't know if we can get something that gives some flexibility, even if it's a half a penny. I know it's still a tax. It's taxes are unpopular, but I think most people could live with a half-cent increase in sales tax more than their property tax bill. That tends to be more impactful and more of a reaction on that. And, in some instances, paying more money than they would if there was a half-cent increase in the sales tax for whatever retail purchases they make throughout the year. So something to keep in mind. And there's some things underfoot that are looking at that, trying to be creative. But the challenge is we got to get our General Assembly members to at least consider it. We've tried lots of times in years past to consider other options for us, because property tax is the only thing you have control over setting it. Even if it's a local option, which means a local referendum to increase sales tax or a meals tax or something to provide more revenue to provide the services and high quality services. So that's all I'll say about that. But so this gets into just a bunch of the other revenue sources on here, and if you want to see the actual dollar amount, you can follow along a little bit back and forth on this spreadsheet. But so Powell bill, which is our street maintenance, 1% increase we're projecting, or additional $2,000 in revenue, 14% increase or additional $2,000 in ABC law enforcement. So the ABC revenues we get from the ABC store, there's two components. There's this general ABC and then ABC law enforcement. ABC law enforcement has to be applied towards some law enforcement efforts to make sure they're complying with the laws at the ABC store. So it's just another additional source of revenue. We don't get a lot from it. It's 14,000 we had on here. There it is. So 14 to 16,000. So it's not the bigger part is the ABC distribution, which we've got 327,000 projected out here of the total revenues we get from ABC. So the 11% increase or additional $700 in tipping fee tax. So construction activity is still fairly strong out there, and then just growth, people coming here, so there's going to be more trash, municipal solid waste. So We get some tipping fee monies. It's tied back to when landfills were closed and some of the cleanup costs, they added this part of the tipping fees for it, and some of it comes back to us to help promote recycling. So that's up slightly, about 2,000. 3% increase or additional $8,324 in appropriated fund balance. So I typically, from year to year, you'll see there's a dollar amount appropriated fund balance that we have in there to balance the budget. We, many, many years have never touched it, which means, yes, you've got our projected $274,928 as appropriated fund balance. Well, that means if we end the year bringing in less revenue than we've spent and everything we do, we'll hit some of that fund balance there. If we wind up bringing more revenue than what we've spent, our fund balance goes up. And that's the kind of simplest way to explain it. But, there was a little bit more I budgeted in there. It only really becomes a problem is if your revenues really are weak or not coming in well, and you're continuing to budget things that go into your operating, like reoccurring expenses, and you can hit a bad problem down the road where your fund balance gets depleted, and next thing you know, you're in a pinch for cash flow or an emergency or, a hurricane or what have you. So thankfully, we're in real good shape financially. I mean, you know how our fund balance is, so we're good there.
I'll just make a comment related to ABC distribution.
Yes.
It might be worthwhile just keeping an eye on the General Assembly there too, because I know just recently on the Senate side, there was a bill filed to privatize ABC sales, which will have an impact for us throughout the state, and so keep an eye on that as well.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. I know it got some steam.
Yeah, no, that's something, I was reading about it this morning.
It got some steam several years back, and former State Representative Chuck McGrady was, and I'm not picking on Chuck, think very highly of him, but I know that was one of his initiatives, was to try and get a lot of, at least consideration of privatizing ABC. So maybe that's popping back up, but obviously that hurts us. There's pros and cons to it. It's not all a bad thing to privatize, but, a little self-serving, but we get revenues here to help pay for services.
Yeah.
It also helps on the good side of ABC. It's much more regulated for safety reasons. They do think that you get less instances of underage drinking and, people buying for that, because, I can tell you in states where that isn't, it is very easy to get liquor places. There's just such a proliferation of liquor stores. So, which then unfortunately falls in the hands of underage folks.
But for the fund balance, we're sitting so good, that's due to both of y'all and staff, so it's done a wonderful job over the
Thank
years,
you.
so just
Yeah.
want to say that as well, so
Yeah.
always do a good job at that.
Thanks. Yeah, and I'll give our folks a lot of credit. They know their budget, and they do, work hard to stay within it, because that's one of the downfalls that can hurt your fund balance too. If you're going way over on your expenses. Sometimes there's unforeseens, you don't have a choice, but that gets you into a problem too. But, when I came here, oh my goodness, our fund balance was so low. Heather and I were talking the other day about it, where, moving money around, it was getting so tight just to cover payroll. So we have come a long way from that. And it wasn't all bad things that led up to it. It's just, you were a younger municipality then. You were adding services, kind of like Mills River has a huge fund balance, pay cash for stuff. Well, once you start paying all cash for big facility, big land purchases or building on there, all of a sudden your cash starts coming down, and,
Tanks.
and then you're like, oh. And if you added services and your operating expenses are up. So a little bit of that happened to us, but, and kudos to our prior board, they had the intestinal fortitude to raise, and we don't raise rates, and that was one of the kind of points, not very often, it's, you've been very conservative boards. But back in 2010, we did in advance. That was really, and I've been here 20 years, that was the only substantive rate increase. I mean, really, it was 5 cents, it was in 2010, but it was to get this part of Fletcher Town Center, or Heart of Fletcher going, get the building built, reconstruct Old Cane Creek Road, and then purchase some of the land out here. So that's what that went towards. I mean, but we started building it then, and that helped our fund balance get up, and so we were in a much better position to tackle that major capital project. But it also gave us a base kind of moving forward from there. So I don't know. We, anyways, we're fortunate. We got a lot of good people here, and we've worked on it, and hopefully we'll keep it, you know, at a healthy place. I mean, I know right now it's really healthy, and we got to look at some areas to spend it down, but I don't think you'll have a hard time. You know, maybe the library project, I you know, I could talk about that a little bit later too. There's been a little bit more movement on that, positive. So, and did I send you an email about meeting again with them? Or?
Mhm.
Okay.
You did.
Yeah, okay.
The MOU, I guess.
Yeah, okay. And I'm sorry, I don't know if I went through everything on that slide. Yeah, I think I didn't hit everything on there. Interest on investment, I didn't hit anything on here. So, you know, with our fund balance being good, we've been able to move money to something called the North Carolina Capital Management Trust, and we've been able to kind of build that up through the years. Well, it now accrues a fairly good amount of interest. We did have a decrease in here of about 40,000, and most of that's probably because we had to shift money out of there back into our like main checking account, money market account to pay bills because of the Helene damage in the park, and then so we've got our FEMA money back in. So now Heather's been shifting some of that back into the capital management trust. Also, the interest rates did go down a little bit in the past year, not much. So that's a combination of those two things has caused that to drop a pretty good chunk there. You know, at some point as we spend fund balance too, that interest on investment will come down, and that won't be as strong of a revenue source. But right now it is, so it's helped us. The 7% decrease or drop of 57,700, that's a notable one. So our third largest source of revenue is utility sales tax, and it's an excise tax on pipe natural gas, electricity, and telecommunications. And we take the league's recommendations and what they're projecting on growth. We've had it overall kind of grow a little bit through the years, but it's a very volatile source. It's based on the weather. And so if it's super cold in the winter, you know, then there's going to be more energy consumption, and that helps. Or super hot in the summer, there's going to be more with, you know, electricity. So based on that, we do have a drop in there. It's not huge, but it is notable. And I don't know if there's anything else to comment about that.
It lags their quarters, we've only booked
Oh, yeah,
two
that's
quarters,
good.
so it's really hard not knowing what we did the last one in June, or the not the last one, but the next one. And the next one doesn't come until September. So it just lags so much that you're constantly like, we're just making some good assumptions and projections and all that stuff. I think we did have a cold winter, I mean, then the June distribution is going to be higher.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so we still have a couple quarter, and they're stronger in that second half. So hopefully this will be better than that, what we've dropped it to. 12% decrease or drop of 4,500 in beer and wine. We get one distribution in May on that. I know we're hearing this out there, maybe y'all are too. I think people are drinking a little less. There's been kind of more of a health, sobriety, non-alcoholic drinks kind of push. So that could be impacting some of this. It may come in above. I mean, we've never had a ton of growth, but you know, you had this huge proliferation of the craft beer industry, and maybe that's come back down a little bit. And then, you know, some of these vineyards and stuff like that. But I do think people are drinking a little less, so that could be playing into this. Especially younger people, there's been a bit more of a push in that. So 20% decrease or drop of 8,000 in cable franchise revenues. We, you know, pull the plug. It's been going on. It just keeps going. So this is money from cable. And, you know, some people still use cable for their internet connections. I don't know if that helps with the revenue on this, or if that's not, unless you have a cable TV. But it's that and satellite. They're dropping because everyone's streaming to watch movies or services like that. At 2% decrease or drop of 2,000 in recreational activities. You know, this is still a fairly steady source. Maybe the middle school camp, thank you, from summer day camp, that was dropped, and so that probably impacts a little bit of our projection down. We may need to look, not this, maybe it's a little late this year, but into next year, do we revise our fees? You know, this includes shelter rentals, which do really well, summer day camp, you know, programs. There's a bunch of things in there. So every so many years, we need to make sure our fee level is comparable to the market. I mean, we don't want to go crazy and hardship for people or hurt our ability to have the programs because the fees get too high. But that's when we might, maybe next year, look at doing that. Budget requests. So unless is there any other questions on revenues before I move to the budget requests? Are we all feel good, understand that?
On the fees, on the we were just talking about a while ago, is there two different type of fees, like non-resident and resident?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah. That has been a nice thing, having that distinction. I tell you, the one area where it really, well, there's two things we do with the summer day camp. We open it to residents first.
Yeah.
That's huge. And then non-residents, and so non-residents get, and a lot of it fills up on the resident side, not completely, and then we get non-residents in. But there's a fee differential for that, for shelter rentals. Pretty much most things we charge a fee. There's a resident and non-resident fee, so yes. Yeah.
And the software like handles all that. So
Oh,
if
perfect.
someone puts in their register their address, because, you know, GIS, so like that is.
Oh, perfect, yeah.
So it'll call like, oh, it's not giving me the right rate, let's go through all of this.
Yeah.
We may have to put the bill address.
Yeah, so many times we'll get, I mean, and they're not like real contentious conversations sometimes, but I'm a Fletcher resident, and we're like, well, you got a Fletcher mailing
Yeah.
address, and you're close, but you're
Because even the mailing address goes into Buncombe County.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, you know, it goes like all the way out to Fairview.
Yeah, so it's like, you're not even the same county.
So, yeah, well, like, I'm a Fletcher resident, you know, the folks who live in, Riverstone, oh, frequently with that, so, but, you know, they don't pay town taxes, so, and usually they're in an unincorporated part of the county somewhere here, or Buncombe, and so they're only paying county taxes, so, yeah, we do give that benefit to our residents, and that's been something that's been important through the years. So back into budget requests. So initially, they came in $1,030,000 above prior year budget. So there was a lot of things, cuts, moving a half cent from CIP to the operating budget. So there's a bunch of things we worked on here to get that down. But part of that big request, obviously, facility improvements, equipment, personnel expenses for the fire department. And it's covered by the rate, mostly by the rate increase. Upgrading the part-time planner position to full-time, which we talked about a little bit already. Large increase in health insurance, as we talked about. And we're staying with a comparable plan. So, I don't think our employees are going to see, actually it improves in some respects, but it's very comparable to what we have. Increase in our monthly fee for recycling services. We contract with Kirby or Curbside Management out of Woodfin, and our contract is set up that they get a rate increase if the CPI goes up or Consumer Price Index, so they look at it from the prior year. Of course, it went up, and we do it by that percentage. The tipping fee, which is, the fee we have to pay to the transfer station for just general garbage, municipal solid waste. Our town's growing, we're adding households, so the tonnage is going up. Plus, even before some of the more recent growth, people were throwing more stuff away. Some of the tonnage was just still coming up a little, but the new households is definitely impacting that. The next bullet's the hardware firewalls. This is an IT thing that need to be replaced. And then we had a whole bunch, the last bullet, smaller capital requests for Public Works, Parks and Rec, Police, shifted to CIP. If it's less than $25,000 that someone's requesting a piece of equipment, let's just say in the police department, we've been trying to fund that in our operating budget side, not in the CIP, because the threshold was $25,000. When we were looking through our cuts, we tried to cut out a lot of these smaller capital requests in the operating budget. I'm going to talk to you about if we could make an exception, because we have room in CIP. Right now, we've got more revenue than expense project requests in CIP. If we could make an exception this year and move some of these to CIP. It doesn't put us over in CIP overall. We're still have more revenue, a little more revenue than expense, but that's what that bullet is about. So when we get to CIP, we'll talk to you about how we recommended doing this. Operating expense, I talked about some of the cuts. Reductions were made to a lot of line items across all the departments to help balance this budget. On the personnel side, it does include a 2.8% COLA for all employees, and then we use a merit pay system that's based on performance reviews that are done annually. I mentioned some of the amount of the tax levy that we dedicate for CIP. We were at 6 cents. This budget would bring it down to 5.5 cents in there. So I'm recommending we take a half penny from CIP and move it over to the operating side. So that's what that last bullet's about. And we're still in good shape in CIP. We used to be up to like 8.5 cents in there. And we just had so much more revenue versus expenses. I mean, if we had a lot more things, bigger stuff that we were financing, we wouldn't have that room. But it's definitely been needed more on the operating side right now versus capital, but still keeping a decent amount of money over there. So with that, I'm going to move into department budget highlights. Doing good for time. You guys good? Moving, and if you need to take a break or something, let me know. So I'll get into the first one, which is the most important one, governing body. That was a joke, but years. But it's not a joke, right? It's our smallest department, and so, these are things that we budget to cover some expenses related to mayor and council, and some of the clerk expense too. But small increase in our overall funding for this, going from $58,629 to $59,379. So when we do the 2.8% COLAs for staff, we do put that into the very small part-time, level monies that y'all receive. But so that salaries line goes up to by 2.8%. So that brings it up from just over 44,000 to 45,000. It impacts FICA a little bit, so the FICA goes up by $3,557 to $3,633. So a slight increase in salaries due to the slight increase in salaries line. We haven't had as many special call meetings, so I recommended that line item come down from 22,250 to 2,000, and again, that's due to the fewer special call meetings. And it's not a big drop. Decrease in travel and training, we aren't quite using all that, so, and y'all are involved with a lot of league activities in that, where there's a lot of travel involved. So we should be fine moving that to 3,500, 4,000 to 3,500. Unless there's any questions on governing body, I'll move. And you can see, I'm sorry, I know I mentioned this before as I'm going through all the departmental budgets. If you want to have this handy and follow on, you can see what we budgeted, every line item in the current year, what the expenditures have been year to date, and then the last column is the manager recommendation, so what I'm recommending in these line items. After governing body into administration. So again, this is covering manager, assistant manager, clerk, our senior accounting technician, tax collector, deputy tax collector, and accounting technician, customer support position. So all those are within admin. A moderate increase in total departmental here from 800,776 to $851,037. Decrease in salaries in some fringe. This is due to turnover in the two positions, because our senior accounting technician, tax collector retired. Susan Hefner moved into that, and then with Susan Hefner's vacancy at the we've retitled and restructured the position a little bit, but it was like deputy tax collector, accounting technician. Now it's like accounting technician, customer support. That came in, just a little bit lower. So we've been able to realize some salary savings there with some of the turnover. We had a part-time, that third bullet, we had a part-time monies that we put in there for an intern, and just as a budget reduction thing here, we took that out. Slight, and then some other miscellaneous line items in here. We had small decreases for fuel expense, maintenance to repair vehicle, maintenance to repair equipment, and motor vehicle expense, and this is due to reductions that we identified, budget reductions. And you can see, and I won't go into each one, they're not huge, going down through the report there. And if we want to stop on any of these at some point, let me know. We did have the significant increase in this is the health insurance, and that's why that's $55,676.
And also to say one thing, we also plugged in, remember we talked about sales tax sales tax refund as a key revenue source.
Yep.
Well, that 55,000 is now played into admin of 55,000, so really, there really wasn't much of an increase the part that you take that out.
That's
Yeah.
in this departmental,
Yes, yeah.
the
Yeah, so it's
expense,
down there. in
the
the
expense side of
The
it.
expense side, yeah.
Yeah, so that's,
I think that's your challenge, pretty good there.
yeah. Yeah, so that's, so that.
So really, it's all flat.
Yeah, it's almost flat, yeah, with that, and I'm sorry, I didn't, that would have been an important thing to mention, thanks for catching that, to mention that in there, so, yeah. We had the sales tax, spending the sales tax, but then we get it back, so we had to list it as an expense line in admin. So next, I'm going to go into professional services. We had a large decrease in this departmental budget, going from $280,481 down to $232,356. We decreased the Greenway Stream Bank line from 20,000 to 0. So we put this in about 7, 8 years ago because we were, not every year, but frequently having to do these minor repairs to the stream bank at the park and some of our vulnerable spots. We've done a lot of repairs there. They're in a lot better shape. So this is partly a budget reduction, budget cut matter. Plus, we did the repairs that FEMA reimburses for. We did some stream bank repair from the damage from Helene. So we figured we'd bring that down. If something really happens, we could cover or repair if we needed to within the new fiscal year as a budget amendment. Our reserves are so strong, our fund balance, so that's why we zeroed this out. It may come back in a following year, depending on stream banks hold up. The next is the public accountant, so that's our auditing expense. It's within a contract, and so it just went up a little bit from 18,600 to 19,100. Increased professional services contract, so I know it sounds a little redundant with the departmental title being professional services. We get a lot of miscellaneous ones that we need. It's mostly like McGill engineering expenses in there. And it can be for all kinds of things, like looking at a fishing pier, which they were supposed to be out there a couple weeks ago, look at it and give us their opinion about permitting and costs and all that for it. But it can be all kinds of miscellaneous things. It's mostly McGill. I'm trying to think some of the other stuff.
Actuarial studies
Oh,
that
yeah.
they pay for OPEB and along with separation allowance.
So, and one thing that has caused us to go up a bit, and I hope in the long term this becomes a real good public benefit, is that stormwater grant program, but it's been slow. I mean, we are getting some calls, we are checking out some new places, but, people are contacting us, seeing if it can fit, but haven't quite crossed the line of putting an application in. We are cautioning them, and we made that change, that if we think they need to have an engineer review it, that they do that, and it does add some expense to have them look at their storm drainage issue, but, so that, it's coming up a little bit because of that too. And we've got it in the budget Public Works, not as high as what we initially thought, and I lowered it a lot. Some is a budget reduction thing to cut expense, but also we're just not seeing quite the level of applications yet. And we've only had really one go completely through, and that was the one over in Fletcher Hills. I forget the name of the street, but he got that project done.
Willis Way.
Willis one, yeah.
Yes.
Willis Way.
Yeah, Wilkie.
Wilkie Way.
Wilkie
Willis
Way,
Way,
yeah.
They
Yeah,
started
thank
to
you.
do-
So,
Pretty
yeah,
close.
Real close.
I should be shocked. I figured it'd be more people, especially after Helene.
I know, they are noticing it, we are getting calls from time to time. We have one right now, it's a bigger deal that they got, it would be a much more expensive, and we're probably trying to get it into that higher category. But they had to get an engineer out there, and their engineer proposal was pretty high, so we're talking to them
At least there's interest in it, so.
Yeah, so it's a really good program, and I hope it continues to take off and really can help a lot of people. But, yeah, we want to make sure people assess it properly and what the improvements are, and if they need some help from a civil engineer, do it, just to increase the chances it'll do what it's supposed to do for them. But I think we'll continue to see people applying for this.
I'm just glad we were able to put something in place to help folks in these situations.
Yeah.
That was a good catch.
I think it's a really good idea. Yeah, we just got a call from someone over in Phase 2 of Windsor Forest, and it looks like a project that may very well be eligible. And it's one that's a little more complicated. It involves their next door neighbor. And I know we got some language in there that if you do a joint one or something with civil. So Jabo's been out there. I don't know if they're going to have Ben Cathy from McGill Associates go, but we're getting the calls. It's just, if we had like 5 or 6 of these in place and done, I would probably recommend you put more money into it for next year. But we're just not quite there yet. And maybe we need to, we'll revise or enhance how we implement it too. I don't know if we can, I mean, I think we got a pretty good first blush at this, but there'll be enhancements that need to be made.
Do we think enough people actually know about it? I mean, would it be worth it to put it in like the newsletter or
Yeah, I mean, like,
something at some point again, just to
yeah, I
remind
think
folks
we
about
do.
it?
Yeah, definitely put it in the newsletter, and maybe just, and Heather's kind of handling our social media with mostly Facebook, but just a reminder, hey, we have this program out from time to time, probably, and it's on our web page. I'm trying to think, the guy who called, the resident who called the other day from, I don't remember from Windsor, how he heard about it. He might have gone to our website.
Yeah.
But people are, the word is getting out, I guess, and they are seeing it some places, but yeah, we need to continue to market it. I know, we want to try and, I sent information to the Lightning, and I didn't get any response back when they were coming. But I talked to another person who does some contract reporting work. I bumped into him. I think he might do a story, so I can maybe send that to the Lightning about just putting the word out about our stormwater grant program. So maybe we can get an article in there. So Matt, I forget Matt's last name, Matt Manson, yeah. He sounded like he was interested in covering some more things for us, so, let's see. Yeah, we had some other things on here, so, I was on Stream Bank, Public Accountant. Yeah, so Town Center, this has gone down a bunch because we've been taking the retail strategies consulting fee. And I'm not recommending it for next year. I mean, because we're going into year 3, started in April. And I've had some conversations with some of you, or some feedback, in the meeting here too. I'm not seeing, enough produced yet that I would feel comfortable recommending continuing it. They do say it takes 3 years while we're going into year 3, so we'll see how much is produced. I know I'm going to have a meeting online with retail strategies and a broker that's interested in our front section of the property for some type of grocery store presence. If it's the right one and we have some other retail in there, then maybe yes. If it's just some large grocery store presence that consumes the whole property, it's not really in the vision for the, maybe a nice boutique type of grocery store would be more ideal, I think, to that site with some other things that, so anyways, that's something and I think I emailed you all about it. I just brought that up, and so we're gonna talk. I know Martin Lewis with Lewis Real Estate Group, they want to stay engaged on this. I think they've been sidetracked with their trying to salvage the Costco project over in Asheville. But we need to get the latest from them to keep that moving. We're going for that express design and some of the Highway 25 improvements and
Yeah.
some of the other traffic stuff. So keep it, but that's why this is going down as much. And then we had some decreased economic development line expense, and this was due to no incentives for Tagios. Tagios is doing fine, and they come into the site, they're doing well, they just didn't hit the timeline, and I'm not, they might have missed one of the capital investment levels or jobs, but they've created a bunch of jobs, capital investment, they just didn't hit the benchmarks or timelines, so.
That's something that changes next year, that we can do a budget. So we just don't want to keep plugging money in there and we don't need it.
Yeah. Because they have to do it, I mean, they have to hit those deadlines when the capital investment has to come, the jobs, then they got to maintain the jobs and they have to report on it. They have to pay, they have to pay their, yeah, they have to pay their taxes. We've had some in the past, not a lot, that felt like they could pay their taxes late or, you know, not pay them. And then maybe they ultimately do. I mean, they will, they'll have to. But think they can be requesting the incentives and no, that is part of this. This isn't just a handout. It's, you have to hit these things in order to qualify and request them. And quite frankly, a lot of these companies, you know, it can help them from a profitability or expense standpoint, but it isn't something that makes or breaks them. It's an enhancement. It's a nice thing. It shows support and maybe a little bit of extra, you know, economic assistance to help them. I'm going to move into planning department. So, oh, and I just one other comment back on professional services. Where do we cover the payment to Apple Country Transit under this? And that just went up by that, you know, we went under that contract.
Yeah, the contract.
So this is because I know there's been lots of discussion in the past on how much we fund to Apple Country, but that just followed the contract terms to 28 hours instead of 21. And contracted fire inspections in there too. Not a huge jump, but $51,535. So with that, I'll move into planning department, and get a bunch of things in here. So, slight increase in our total departmental appropriations, going from $237,822 to $249,277. Again, upgrading the part-time planner to a full-time position to better support the department. Some slight adjustments in salary and fringe line items due to that upgrade. There was some budget cuts in here. We had some slight decreases in postage, fuel expense, advertising, department supplies, dues and subscriptions, and M&R equipment due to identified expense reductions. He still has a budget, so don't worry. I know it sounds like a lot in there, but you know, we try and look where they've spent year to date, what they're articulating they need into the next year. And I think this is somewhere where we could cut some things down that maybe line items are being underutilized from prior years without hurting them operationally to do their job. This is with the other big one in here. So we kept the stormwater program line at $30,000. So this is consulting assistance from McGill and from Land to Sky. They had requested as a decision package, it was like $24,000. We cut that out, and kudos to our new planning and zoning director. Tyler did express he's going to try and take on some of these other duties and get assistance from other local governments that are doing this, and maybe Land to Sky too. So that was an important expense reduction for consulting fees. Then I'm going to move into town facilities, and again, this is that kind of that catch-all department that covers a bunch of things, you know, from our newsletter to advertisements to contract services for miscellaneous things. Small discretionary line item in here. So the total departmental appropriations in here actually decreased from $156,150 to $149,368. The discretionary line is a line that is really, for me, if I see something we haven't budgeted and it's minor, we've had it at 4,000, we're recommending it be brought down to 2. A lot of years they don't use it or touch it. Excuse me, I did use it a little bit this year when we put out, if y'all wanted an iPad. I know one of you, Jim expressed, and then we opened that up, and I think Jim was the only one who took us up on it. So that was kind of an unforeseen and something important, want to take care of quickly, so that was something under discretionary. A lot of years we're not touching it. So it was kind of an expense reduction, budget reduction. Travel and training, this mostly for me, decreased from 5,000 to 4,000 just due to decreased need. Advertisements, so we decreased that from 1,400 to 1,000. This is just due to less expense anticipated. Contract services, and then there's a whole bunch of things under that. 17,700 down to 12,600. This is just due to less expense anticipated in there. And then M&R equipment, maintenance, repair equipment line decreased from 600 to 500, and this is just due to less anticipated usage. That's town facilities. Good, I'll keep moving here.
Or does anybody need a break? Everybody good so far?
I'm good right now.
Yeah.
Everybody good? Okay. So moving in, you know, it's one of our larger departments here, public safety. They are our largest staff-wise department. A moderate increase in the overall budget from $2,357,502 to $2,525,598. Our excuse me, our largest increase in expense is associated, understandably, with salary and fringe line items, and this is just normal COLA in there. The biggest, and this was our kind of one equipment issue in there, and we did do some expense reduction on this. Some of you are familiar with these Viper radios, and basically it's a statewide communication channel. As a radio system that came into place years ago to improve statewide communications and regional communications on the radio. And they're secure channels. If you have an emergency or domestic violence, something, you can communicate securely and accurately with other agencies. And Viper continues to get upgraded, and so to improve the channels, keep that secure and working properly. There was a Viper upgrade needed.
Phase 2.
Pardon me?
Yeah, phase 2, yeah, that's
Yeah,
mandatory.
phase 2.
Yeah, it's mandatory, you have to do it, so.
Yeah, and I was trying to does it could at least work with Buncombe, if we wait a year, or, you can still pick up on your cell phone and call, or go through radio dispatch for things, but, I mean, they checked it out, and it's like, no, even talking to Buncombe, it'll be gone
Yeah.
on that channel if you don't have that. So I did get with the chief on this, and what we're going to try and do, I did reduce a little bit of it was like 8,000, then down to 6,000. we're gonna try and do some of the radios in the current fiscal year, get some of those going, so then we'll be able to hopefully cover them all. You know, worst case, if not everyone has the Viper, there's always a supervisor or other people who have it, but it's still the plan to get them all upgraded in time for the deadline. We had some slight adjustments up and down to other line items in here. The part-time reserve line is one that went up. So the chief's been utilizing some part-time staff mostly to help with the evidence room and managing that. You know, this is cataloging, disposing of things. It's a real important function for police departments. And,
Gets you in a lot of trouble.
thank you, took the words right out of my mouth.
Yep.
So yeah, as Jim knows, working in law enforcement for a long time, there's been many departments who have run into huge problems with it, where things disappear and they just don't keep a close eye on it. And then also it's a whole process of getting rid of stuff too, when you can destroy it or get it back to the owner, if it can go back to a property owner. So that's been an important piece to have some part-time, mostly for that. We do have some other part-time assistants, but so a little bit of an increase there from 20,500 to 22,000. Overtime line decreased from 18,000 to 16,000. This is due to budgetary reductions. Travel and training reduced a little bit from 14,000 to 13,000. That was due to budget reductions. Public relations line, which I think is a real important one as far as department's engagement with the public and with other law enforcement agencies, that actually went up a little bit from 3,000 to 3,500, just due to increased community engagement needs. And I think our department does a good job of it, and it's, you know, a real important thing that, not a lot of money in there, but to, you know, whether it's with the homeowners association or what's that, National Night Out, and then other activities with other law enforcement agencies or nonprofits like Safe Light and some of them. So, said that right, Safe Light.
Yep.
So that's a real important function, and I think our department, our police department, does a good job with that, and, you know, credit to the chief and others. Drug forfeiture, so this is kind of an underutilized line. So what this is, I think most of you are aware, you know, when they seize assets and it gets routed through this system, there's money that comes back through drug asset forfeiture, and there's state and federal, and so we've got some money, like almost like fund balance. It's not a lot, it's like 20-some thousand, and we try and do a line item where they can expend some of this. And a lot of years they haven't, sometimes they have. So it was just a budgetary reduction. If they do come up with something they really want to get, the money's there. They probably need to do a budget amendment if they identify some equipment or items, but, and that may come back up next year. So that was just a small reduction there. The physical drug line item, that's just, you know, putting employees through the, new employees through the screening process. That decreased a little bit because we've been essentially fully staffed. I mean, I guess we just lost one, maybe another, but for the first time in a long time, we became fully staffed this past year. So we haven't had as many vacancies going on. So uniforms line decreased a little bit from 15,000 to 13,000. It's just due to less expense anticipated. The maintenance and repair M&R equipment line increased from 7,000 to 13,000. This to cover the Viper radio updates for phase 2. Unless there's any questions back on police department, I'll roll into IT. You all good? Okay. So IT, we're continuing to use WNC Business IT Solutions. Of course, mostly by the face of Matthew, or IT Matthew, who's the part owner, I guess, president of the company. He's got a partner who owns it too, I think, with him. But they continue to do a great job. I mean, we get high level quality and very responsive IT support. So, excuse me, it's still, I think, a benefit to us to continue to contract with them and, not hire our own IT staff. So it's working well, plus our annual fee to them, just for general support, them coming here and working on stuff. It's stayed the same, I think, for 2 years in a row now. So it's a reasonable price for what we get. And I think I've done a very good job on the cybersecurity, various safeguards they continue to put in. Plus, we have to go through training. And it was one of the things, they sent it to you too.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
I reached out to him the other day because I'm like, is this really from y'all
Yeah.
before I go and
Yeah.
open
Oh,
anything?
good.
And he's
Yeah.
always real responsive. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, we send that out the first of the month.
Yeah.
You're good. So-
Matthew's amazing. I mean, he's like, I don't know why, I think their company's gotten big enough that he would be as hands-on and all that stuff and kind of delegate it, but he is. Yeah, so that training is good, just to keep us vigilant, and, because usually where it happens is, unwittingly, someone sends something to an employee, and they open it, and, then stuff gets in, or phishing things. So we have to do the training, and he even sends tests. So, and you're like, and then I'm like, I failed one. I feel so stupid. I should, and it wasn't like, but it just goes to show you, this stuff is slick that they send.
Well, and you get so
and
busy, you don't,
yeah, it was like opening minutes from, I don't know what it was, and it's some group we deal with, and it was like, okay. But there was something still a little bit kind of weird in it, how they were sending it to you, and I should have, or just delete it, or you send it to Matthew, you send it to the company, but they send tests too, which is kind of good to keep us on our toes.
yeah, I failed them too.
But you have to do the training too. You can't just delete the training, because if you try and be lazy about it, because they'll keep sending it to you and reminding you on it. So they're doing a good job, and want to continue to work with them. So it's a moderate increase in our overall departmental budget from $258,600 to $287,850. This is mostly due to capital project requests. He had 3 in there. One we cut out, so we have to do the ADA website enhancements. That's that last bullet on here, but the implementation deadline's been delayed, so this is something I cut out of here. It's not we don't want to do it, we know we need to do this, it's just we have a little more time, and we have a lot of budgetary demands here, as far as we're trying to look for ways to cut some costs to get us through this next fiscal year. So that will be done, it's just not in this budget. Some other things in IT, telephone line increased from $50,050 to $50,700. This is due to additional data costs. Our cell phones and then our landline for the buildings covered through there. Dues line increased from $13,400 to $19,400. This is due to some service price increases. Increase in our subscriptions IT from $74,050 to $74,650. This is due to vendor increases and new software that we added. Tyler at Planning and Zoning had a good suggestion for a software that helps to track review of site plans or plans that come in for various developments. So it's a good upgrade. Capital expense-wise, so this line increased from 5,000 to 27,000. The 5,000 is just like a base amount we put in there for miscellaneous, like parts, if something goes wrong.
Runner goes around,
Yeah.
smaller.
Right, smaller, like hardware, things like that. But the increase was for, these firewalls are going out, and we either replace the hardware on them or have to go to this higher level subscription, which costs just as much as the hardware. So I guess it makes more sense to extend it out on the hardware and then not pay that other subscription part or the high level for that. So that's, and then MDTs are the mobile data terminals. They're special laptops that go in the police cars. And we need to have some of those replaced, and we had a new officer in. So that's IT, unless there's any questions on that. We're continuing to move along. But again, I mean, it's a constant thing, and you all know this, that using computers, working places, to stay vigilant with cybersecurity, and it's just always someone trying to get in. So if you're good with that, I'll move on to contracted services for Fletcher Fire and Rescue. So obviously this is the big one. So Fletcher Fire and Rescue will receive what the tax levy produces on 12 cents of our new proposed 29.5 cent tax rate. So 1.5 cent increase. They need to rebuild the Snaples station, and you know that was just hammered by Helene. So and they're trying to do some flood-proofing things in there and some higher level stuff I guess FEMA won't cover. So that was a very costly item in there, but you know, not a want to have, a need to have. Hooper's Creek Station, there's some important upgrades that need to be done out there. That's Station 2. Apparently they don't have a firewall between the living quarters and
It was
the
a
Bay area.
Wooden OSB board instead of a fire-rated wall.
Yeah, so, and then they were gonna add a little bit of square footage in there too, or 1,000 square footage, and I think a bathroom. So that was lacking very much. So those are two big things that necessitated this. And then, excuse me, personnel costs, they're gonna do a 3% COLA. Their increases in pay, apart from that, are based on years of service. I call it longevity, they might call it something else. And then they're needing additional staff to stay at the level they feel they need to cover the shifts. So they're looking at 3 per year over the next 3 years. And some of this may shift, and you know, we'll hear from Chief Griffin about that. Retirement contributions, they're trying to raise that to the same comparable level of like our contribution rate for local government employee retirement system, which they're not in. And then health insurance, like a lot of us have big increases in health insurance premiums. So that's what, you know, comprises this, and, you know, it's big, and it's a big increase, but, you know, these are things they really feel they need to be at to be functioning at a high level, keep them so they can stay at a, the fire rating, ISO 3, which is a really good fire rating, which also then, in turn, benefits residents and businesces based on your homeowner's premium you pay. So the lower that number goes in the ISO, the better the rating. And we're, you know, we're really good for, you know, municipality our size and their fire district. I don't know, I'll just pick on Trevor for a second here, being a fire chief in another, you know, so like what's the ISO rating for Skyline?
2. Class 2, yeah. And for like Sky Island, there'll never be a Class 1. There's like a handful of Class 1s in the state of North Carolina.
Yeah, there-
That's like Raleigh and places like that, just cause of your water, your
Yeah,
distribution
I
and
heard.
stuff like that, personnel. But
Personnel.
yeah,
Okay.
but the big thing is, yeah, it's water and everything else. So like
Yeah.
Asheville Class 1, they got all the water.
Yeah.
Like Fletcher, I use Fletcher, for example.
Yeah.
Hoopers Creek, there's no hydrants and stuff, so they'll never
Yeah,
be a Class 1 ever.
Right,
Like I said, the
right.
best they could probably do is a 3, or even a 2 could probably drop down.
yeah,
But in fact, for the homeowners, that's still phenomenal. I mean, like
Yeah.
a Class 9 to all the way down to a 3, that's great.
yeah, yeah. So wow, you got 2, that's excellent, and 3 really good,
Yeah.
so. Because I remember we were at a 4, not that long ago.
Long time,
when
yeah.
They improved it to a 3. So, kudos to our fire department, fire district to do that. So I don't know, if y'all want to discuss any part of this or talk about it, or I know some of you are a little more knowledgeable just because of what you do and.
I would still
being on
just like to
fire
know
board.
what the county is looking at and somehow
Match, yeah.
match what they're
Yeah,
projected to do. Just, I don't want to give one district favor
Yeah.
over another and just keep it streamlined
and we
for
went.
both
yeah.
areas.
Okay. And we went different, on the last
Yeah.
revale, we didn't go up to, and I think the county was a little upset with us on that, so.
And I know this is, I hate to say, this is needed from the last administration up there, that they let a lot of stuff go. And the new
Yeah.
administration come in and seen a lot of deficiencies. So they're
Yeah.
trying to bring the department up to the area where it needs to be.
Yeah,
And it could affect that ISO rating down the road too, if they don't have what they need to meet those standards. This will keep them at that level, personnel response, training. There's a lot that goes into it besides water hauling, water sources and stuff like that, so.
yeah, Chief's done a good job communicating with me, and I think really digging his teeth into this and analyzing where we're at when he came in, new chief, Chief Griffin, taking over the department.
I can tell you from going up there, the morale
Oh, yeah.
alone
180.
up there is like a 180-degree difference. Just the training, the opportunities they're getting, the just attention they're getting now is night and day different.
That's great. Good. So, on a good trajectory there, which is good
Yep.
to see. So let's see what else so, what dollar-wise, what does that mean? So the total appropriations for Fletcher Fire and Rescue will increase from $1,927,477 to $2,308,702 to cover these things. And then we also budget $24,000, a line item, and this is, we go by a projected values, and then once it gets actually billed, there's more things that are found, and it gets billed, and we wind up under compensating them because we audit it based on what is budgeted versus what's billed, not collected necessarily, but billed, and then we reconcile that, and that's why we put that, because we tend to underpay it a little bit, and why we have that 24,000 line item. It's actually been coming in several years above, but we kept it at 24. We've had years less than that, but it seems like the last couple of years.
Is it this year when they start getting that Mills River, we had a contract with Mills
Yes.
River?
Yeah, that goes
Yeah.
away.
So that's in here.
Okay.
So Mills River no longer receiving any part of our property tax base. It was just on one parcel there, the former Continental site, which is One Quality Way, and Tagios and some others. But yeah, that ended in 2026. We did a letter just to advise Mills River Fire, and checked with our attorney on some things, because there was some notice stuff there that lapsed a little bit, but we're good to go on it. I didn't hear anything back from Mills River on it. I notified.
I know they're prepared, they're aware.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a lot of money there, the
No,
revenue.
and they've been preparing for a while, they knew it was coming.
Yeah, good. It was like 50 sometimes. Yeah. So, but then, every little bit helps. That's another little shot in the arm there now. And in fairness to our Fletcher Fire and Rescue, they were double covering that too, just because their fire district included that property as well. So with that, if you're good, I'll move into Public Works. Moderate increase in our total departmental appropriations here from $1,696,392 to $1.7 million here, $55,118. No new positions requested this year. Last year, they did add a full-time maintenance specialist. So that definitely helps them in their capabilities and all the things that Public Works does. We did have a lot of small capital request items, and like I mentioned earlier, we're recommending these move over to CIP as a one-time exception. The 2-post lift, drum pumps they talked to you about, airless paint sprayer, and then they're covering the remodel for the police department, which is creating more storage space than the unfinished space downstairs. Recycling costs, I mentioned earlier, going up due to CPI going up and our contract provisions with Kirby. What is the actual dollar amount? So we pay a per household fee per month. So that's going up from $4.50 per household a month to $4.62, $4.52 to $4.62. It's an $8,000 annual increase. Not huge. It's I think Kirby's, it's still worked out well for us to have them collect. They're kind of the only game in town as far as a material recovery facility to the place it goes to and processes and gets rid of, the markets, gets rid of it, or sells it. But it's still working well for them to do the collection on it. Maybe at some point in the future, Public Works takes that over, but they're well set up for it right now, and and we have good participation rate. If you look at our
I was gonna ask.
yeah, it's 75%. I mean, it's not as high as like I've heard Asheville's gets like in the low 90s or something like that. That's one thing we need to continue to think about ways to promote recycling and get people to, if you don't recycle, to start recycling. It's not hard. I mean, you just put it in a different container. I know it's a little bit more of a pain to put 2 carts out instead of just 1, but it's only every other week too on the recycling. So they were, I don't know how much they've been doing it. They were going to the schools a little bit, Kirby would, to help promote, but I mean, a lot of people know about recycling. We have a good amount of folks that participate, but just continue to try and push to promote that and get people to participate. And we've made it easier. You don't have, you can commingle, throw it all together. Got a nice clean cart. It doesn't blow out. I know it's a little pain if you don't have much and maybe you're an elderly person or someone with, physical mobility issues. We do have the thing where if you sign up for it and they check the household out, they'll go to the door, or they'll go up close to the house. And you don't have to bring it out to the curb. We have to have some people signed up for that. Kirby charges us a little bit more for it, but Public Works will go and do it, and Kirby. So and that's a nice service for our residents. Other things in Public Works, so the salary line, we'll obviously see an increase for the COLA and merit adjustments. Our fringe benefit line items will increase for the COLA and merit. Travel and training, we decreased from $13,500 to $6,500. This is just due to less need for the full CDL training. We went through a thing a couple of years ago where they changed the requirements for the CDL training. It was a lot of additional expense, so, and our guys, it's all guys in there, have their CDL, the ones who need it or working, they have their CDL license now. M&R town facilities decreased from 108,500 to 102,000. This is just due to we're trying to identify some budget reductions. We've done a good job staying close to that. Ever since we moved into this building, there's a lot of moving parts to keep up with that. And it includes some other things besides town hall, of our town facilities that Public Works maintains. M&R US 25, so this is special maintenance they do on Highway 25 corridor. We decreased it 17,000 to 15. This is due to some budget reductions. I still think that's enough in there to keep up with those core things. If that's a problem, we'll let you know. And I mean, how do y'all feel about some of they do the flowers and some of the.
Looks good.
Yeah, looks good.
I don't know if you hear anything from the public.
I hear compliments every now and again.
Observations.
Especially in the
Yeah.
holidays.
Yeah, especially in the holidays.
And I guess I'm
yeah.
more interested, are there more things people want to do over here and stuff like that?
The only thing I've heard, and I know it would be something, because we did it through the MPO, but was to extend that lighting up
Yeah,
towards Ingalls a little bit more to
Okay.
catch those sidewalk areas and that sort of thing, but
yeah. I think I heard that, yeah, from someone too. Okay, thanks. And then M&R vehicles decreased from 50,000 to 35,000. And some of this is due to less expense anticipated. Yeah, part prices have gone up, but we have a pretty up-to-date fleet. And I would say more on the newish side, which, you know, through our CIP, we try and keep the pickup trucks, the garbage trucks replaced and keep that up to date. So that has helped. And if you're wondering on the street sweeper, that may come back to you as, and we don't have it in this budget, but, I mean, we'll get some insurance, we got, or received it.
We already got paid.
Yeah, we got some insurance proceeds. I mean, it doesn't cover or replace, get a brand new one. It'll only cover about maybe 30–40% of the cost, something like that. But we may look at a budget amendment just to try and get the street sweeper back. I think we do get a good amount of value when they're out there doing that in our streets. They even helped a little bit on 25. Actually, that's where the accident happened. Even though that's not a town-maintained road, it just helps with the appearance of town. I mean, I think we all can see it when you drive on 25 and you're like, you know, that debris, or wish someone would clean that up. Well, sometimes that's done by our street sweeper out there. So, yeah, it makes a difference in the look in town. Department supplies, we increased from 8,000 to 10,000. This is just due to material cost rising. Stormwater grants, I talked about that earlier. This is our new stormwater grant. We had 100,000 in there, but just, you know, as a budget reduction thing, in full disclosure, partly that. But also, we aren't getting the amount of activity that we thought on applications. I mean, if it starts really coming back, gangbusters, you could look at a budget amendment, but we'd probably address that in the succeeding fiscal year. But we still can get a bunch of projects done at 40,000, depending on what we receive. So it is funded, just not quite at the level we anticipated for the new fiscal year. Landfill charges, so this is, you know, what the garbage truck is taking to the transfer station for that household waste, municipal solid waste it's called. We have had a growth in households, so it's going up from 145,000 to 150,000. The uniforms line increased from 12,966 to 14,000. This is just due to increased costs. And then disposal. So disposal fees is what we pay for the brush and leaves. And that went up a little bit from 20,000 to 22,000. This is just increase in brush and leaves collected. We get a tremendous amount. If you look at Jabo's reports, a lot of people take advantage of the brush collection. I'm pretty good on the leaves, but leaves is seasonal. And I know you mentioned, and it's been a big help, they found we started using the garbage pal on Old Hendersonville Road there across from Sycamore Cottages. And their tipping fees, or their tipping fee is less than going to the transfer station at Henderson County. And on the general garbage collection or disposal, it's still, we feel it's a little bit better still to be going to the transfer station in Henderson County. Of course, they want us to because they want the tonnage for the tipping fees. The actual tipping fee is a little less at the waste management, which is years ago, we used to always go there because it was such a big disparity in the tipping fee from the Henderson County one to the one up in Buncombe County there with waste management. Even though it was a longer drive, it was still a better deal to go up there. But then I-26 construction happened, and it became a real thing going up there. And a little bit of a safety issue driving the garbage truck through there. So we shifted back to the transfer station in Henderson County. Now, if it continues as I-26, especially the part between here and Buncombe County, as that gets finished, we may switch back to doing that, and the tipping fee being less up there. So, but we've analyzed that several times, and right now it's still, overall, it's better to be going closer there, even though it's a little bit higher tipping fee. Unless there's any other questions on just Public Works, Powell bill, which we kind of associated with Public Works. A little bit of an increase here in our Powell bill revenues. What we're seeing from the league, in addition to sales tax, utility sales tax, tipping fee, all those other state shared revenues that come back to us, they do provide some guidance on estimated Powell bill distributions. And right now, the General Assembly has kept the funding at the same level. Something could change in the current current budget session of General Assembly. We're hoping not. They seem to kind of want to try and keep it at that same level, which is really important to us to try and keep up. You know, we're not one of those municipalities that our roads are in such marginal condition that they're struggling to keep up, or they're contributing from just the regular general fund to try and do it. Like they're a little bit smaller municipality than us, but like Floral Park, they ran into an issue with trying to keep up, that they were contributing a large sum of money that was non-Powell bill from their budget to try and keep up with their roads. Excuse me, and there's other municipalities. We're still, because a lot of our subdivisions were built that long ago, we're doing okay on it. I think our overall roads are in decent shape to good in town, but hopefully we don't have to get to the point where we're having to subsidize that with other revenues. But right now we're doing pretty well. And we try and keep some money in that dispersing account. We try not to spend it all down, because there's other expenses in the Powell bill besides just the roads we resurface. They also pull some funding for it for like materials from snow and ice removal. Plows, we purchased those snow plows out of there. There are some things you can do with sidewalks, but we haven't done that with sidewalks. So there's some other eligible expenses under Powellville. We mostly use it for our street resurfacing plan. If you're good, I'll move into our last operating department here, Parks and Rec. Please stop me at any point if you have any burning questions or comments or input, feedback. Parks and Rec, a small increase in our overall departmental appropriation from $765,676 to $769,513. We're still only seeing moderate increases in our salary and fringe lines. This is due to some turnover in staff. We had a new, when Josh moved in, we realized some salary savings there. There's still a little bit from that. I mean, that will change as, hopefully he's here a long time and that he moves up. We also are Parks and Rec maintenance supervisor, and so we've had a couple of things that have helped to kind of keep that down a little bit lower. No additional full-time or part-time positions requested in this budget. They are requesting, and I've got it in here, but over on the CIP side, it would normally stay in here, but due to the budget cuts we were looking at on some of these capital things and the operating, moving it to CIP, but that Polaris or side-by-side or UTV to replace that, or I think we're trying to keep 2 in there. Salary and fringe line items increased a little bit for COLA and merit adjustments. Part-time salaries, which we have a lot of part-time employees, and there's a bunch of them are seasonal, but in Parks and Rec, we lowered it from 115,000 to 100,000. This is just due to less than anticipated expense in there. We did increase, a small increase in our overtime line from 4,000 to 5,000. This is due to assistance at events. Our utilities increased from 38,000 to 40,000. This is just greater usage at the park and energy usage there. That's water, lights, sewer bill. And travel and training decreased from 6,000 to 4,000. This is due to some budget reductions in there. The holiday decorations, we decreased that from 7,000 to 3,000. This is just due to less need for purchases. We've kind of got a lot of the decorations, so we haven't been needing as much or purchasing as much in there. Program materials increased from 36,000 to 44,000. This is for fireworks. So I know Josh had talked to you about adding fireworks in at the Family Festival. So I initially had cut this and tried to find a way to put this back in because it is a nice enhancement for that event. We don't do a fireworks show for 4th of July. We don't do a 4th of July event. It is cheaper to do fireworks than when it's not 4th of July. So to add this in is, I hope you'll find, will be in the public will enjoy that, a nice enhancement.
I think you'll see a big draw of more people coming to the Family Fest.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Festival.
Yeah,
Now,
good.
once
I
that
hope so, yeah. I think so too. I've always enjoyed, when I've gone and watched, I love fireworks. I always think it's a nice touch if you can have that in an event, but, so yeah, that includes that in program materials. Summer day camp, and back to the Family Festival, and I think even for the fireworks, we do get sponsors for most of our events, and they get a bunch of sponsors for that too. So that does help to underwrite some of that cost. Summer day camp decreased from 37,000 to 25,000. We don't have middle school camp in there. We do think, from some prior years that there was some underutilization of the expense, so that we felt we can bring that down as another cost savings measure. But the middle school did bring that down. Let's see, and then M&R vehicles decreased from 5,500 to 3,500, and this is just due to less anticipated expense. We have newer fleet in there, so there's not, as much repair bills on there. And they don't drive a great distance there either during the day. Advertising increased from 1,500 to 2,500, and this is due to the need for new signage for some events. I think they might be doing some new signage for the farmer's market. That starts next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
Yeah, 3 to 6. I think they've got 15 or 20. 18, you remember from staff meeting, okay. 18 vendors signed up. So hopefully that'll be even better this year. I think it's a nice location over at the park, and just, people knowing about it, coming out, having good vendors. It's a nice thing for the community. And if you all have been out there, I've purchased some produce and things, and it's nice. It's great to have that. Some other things in Parks and Rec, the departmental supplies decreased from 5,000 to 2,500, and this is due to budget reductions. Dues and subscriptions decreased from 2,000 to 1,000 due to decreased need. Contract services increased from 25,000 to 27,000. This is due to increased costs with vendors. Park maintenance increased from 60,000 to 62,000. This is due to increased activity at the parks, and boy, we got a lot of people out there. A lot of visitors, and then of course when we have events and sporting activities, it gets used a lot. And we have two parks. It's not just the big park, but also Kate's and Pete's Park now too, which is still our smaller park, a really nice park that gets good use. And nice to have another park shelter out there that gets rented, especially since our one at Billmore Community Park gets used a lot. But two really nice parks. But yeah, the usage just.
I did stop and talk to the new vendors working the park. We were over there Sunday, and they've been very pleased and had a lot of increased traffic there.
Okay,
A lot of sales,
Good, the
which
concession.
has been good at the
Yeah,
concession
good,
stand.
good.
so.
How many people? I haven't been by there to get something to eat or check it out.
They don't have
Is it-
hot food on Sundays, though.
Yeah, they do pizzas.
Oh, because I've been by there multiple times looking for hot dogs and pizza and
Yeah, you
settle
just-
for nachos.
Yeah. So,
Well, good. I'm glad they're getting good sales.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll be curious, let's get through a year and get feedback from it, but, good, I hope that works out well.
I think the people going to the park are appreciating it a whole lot too, to have some kind of substantial
something to
food.
stop, yeah.
Yeah,
Because they're coming straight from work to
Yeah.
these baseball games with their kids.
right.
I mean, it's.
We really don't have anywhere outside of Airport Road or down near the interstate where people can stop and
Yeah,
grab something on the run, so this gives them a better
Or
option.
feel comfortable
Good.
leaving their kids and going and getting something,
Yeah.
so it's, I think it's
I like
working
that
out
they
pretty
have
good.
pizza, it's something different
Yeah.
than the normal, just nachos, hot dogs.
Yes.
Whatever. Let's see. So I think that was it for Parks and Rec. And really the operating budget. So I'm going to go into the CIP next, and then just a reminder, so we'll make some final adjustments when I get the last set of values from the county middle of this month, and plug that in, and I'll let you know what the new numbers are. I don't anticipate it's going to be much of a difference from what you saw today. It should go up a little bit, which helps. And then, I'll do that shorter presentation at the June 8th meeting. Oh, and then the other thing that happens, I'll work on the budget message with the very final numbers, and we have to advertise it for public comment and review. So it'll be interesting, you know, since you have a slight increase in your rate, that do we get any or some comments on it or feedback? You know, so many years we don't have any rate increase, and once in a blue moon we do. And we just don't get a lot of feedback from the public on it, so, but we have to advertise. I'll do the budget message and have all that ready for comment review, and then you'll have your public hearing on the June 8th meeting. So unless there's any questions on anything, or anything else you want me to cover, I'll go into CIP.
I think we're ready to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ready to go?
All right, rolling along. Okay. So our capital improvement budget or plan, or we call it CIP, like I said earlier, we had 6 cents in there. This one, and this is partly a budgetary issue, just trying to shift some resources, and we had a lot of budget cuts in here. But when you run the levy through on this, we have a little more revenue than expenses for the project. So I'm recommending that you fund it with 5.5 cents of the tax levy to fund the projects. And then, so what does 5.5 cents produce on that value that I shared with you earlier at over 1.9 billion? It's $1,058,155 for this fiscal year we're working on, which is a great sum of money to fund capital projects. So of that 5.5 cents, that 0.055, 3.5 cents of it's dedicated for projects supported by debt service or loans, and then the remaining 2 cents to be applied towards projects paid for with cash, or sometimes pay-as-you-go is another term for that. So what does the 3.5 cents produce on the levy? That fourth bullet there is $673,371. And then the amount of the levy available for new projects without debt, that's the 2 cents, is $384,784. So those are those 2 blocks of money for debt service and cash projects. And then, so what are our debt service projects right now? We have 4 listed in there. The one is town hall improvements, which I mentioned earlier what that all covers. The second's the Highway 25 land acquisition, so that's part of our town center property. We purchased that about 4 or 5 years ago. The copier lease payments, and then subscriptions payments, and those are some auditing things we have to include over on this side now. Debt service-wise, so what are the payments that are attributed to those projects? Town hall, our debt service requirements just over $326,256. Debt service for the Highway 25 land acquisition is at $153,252. And you'll see that come down every year. And cat just went by there. I think that was a cat. Maybe it was a possum.
No, it's a possum.
Was it a
Oh.
possum?
Yeah.
All right.
It looks young. I threw a biscuit out there a while ago for it, back of the balcony.
Little excitement here. So, what's not as interesting is the person who came up and drank out of the fountain there.
No,
Did this,
we have-
Oh,
did the
boy.
budget retreat or budget meeting, I don't know how many years ago. Who was on council then when that happened?
We were in the
None of you?
conference room.
We were there.
We were in the conference room. Prior council didn't want to do it in the multipurpose or in here, and so we were standing there. This young guy came up and started drinking out of the fountain.
Nice.
So,
Yeah, wouldn't be my choice.
There's a lot of issues
Yeah.
going on, but
Definitely
yeah,
not
that was,
fitting in
Yeah.
water.
Yeah.
yeah, I know.
public
Should have
space.
invited him inside. Talk about a distraction.
No, I'm sure.
So, but the Highway 25, that'll come down, I don't know how many years left do we have on that? That's not a lot. But hopefully, if we can get a developer locked in, that will buy the land, and so that debt service will be paying off. So debt service on the copier lease at just over $10,600, the subscription payments at $14,625. So after you take those total debt service payments and then that amount I mentioned on the prior slide of what the 673 of what 3.5 cents produces for debt service, we have some surplus monies there. That's $168,543. And before I forget, the last bullet on there, the garbage truck, you'll notice is noticeably absent on this. That is in something we wanted to do in year one in the CIP. We don't have it budgeted in here, and the explanation is the debt service payment may not hit until the following fiscal year, because we'll get bids on it, we'll purchase it, which takes months. It could, I think the lead time is pretty long, I thought, on the garbage truck. So we're thinking it may not hit that first payment to the next fiscal. It could hit like the very end of this upcoming fiscal year. So I don't have that in here. What we would probably do in full disclosure is bring it to you as a budget amendment in this fiscal year we're working on. There's a new one. And then,
Receive the financing.
yeah, receive the
Buy
final.
the garbage truck, then it will roll.
Roll over to next year.
Right. And so it's a little bit of a wash. It's just timing on this. And so that's why it's not up here.
If it was to hit, we have funds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's an important point is there's enough debt service. Even on the next slide, I'll show there's a little bit of a deficit with all the cash projects, or it's very small. But the payment would probably be about 100 and maybe 10, 120,000. So there's room. It depends how many years we do it. We don't do it any more than 4 years, I think, is the max. We can by law, I think, go up to 5 without having to go to LGC approval. So I just want to point out the garbage truck. And I think it is important to get that going because, our garbage trucks get a tremendous amount of wear and tear on them. And I think we had a life of like 7 years. And you can stretch them out longer, but it's just more repairs. So, plus we're growing, we're adding households, now we're doing trash collection, like 5 days a week. It used to be 4 for so long. So I think it's important sooner than later we get another one into the fleet. And we might roll one out, and we'll determine that later this year, I guess, about if we auction and get to the point. But I think we're at 3 right now.
That
I
will
think-
be free when we buy this one,
We
because
will have
remember, we
to.
lost one to flood.
Yeah,
The
but
oldest one.
I thought we had, so we're only
We
operating
just
with
have 2 right now.
So we'll have 3 on, which we really should,
Yeah.
because we try and keep the oldest one for leaf collection and as a spare if things break down. Because you really want to have at least 2 ready to roll at all times. So that's everything on the debt service side. And then that 2 cents cash projects of that of the 5.5 cents. These are pulled, with the exception ones I have asterisks by. These are, year one projects in our new 5-year CIP, but the police vehicles, 3 of them at $175,000. Painting first floor town hall at $45,000. Parks and Rec utility tractor at $60,000. The sewer line replacement, this is out at the big park at Billmore Community Park, that is a project in there at $45,000. And then these remaining ones were the smaller, and we're asking for approval to go below the $25,000 threshold for a CIP project if we can cover these, since we have revenue space in CIP. But there's asterisks next to all 4 of them, 5, excuse me, and then denoting it that the very last thing on here shows about they're capitalized items. So we didn't want to do anything, it was a capital purchase that we couldn't capitalize means it falls on our asset list. And all these things were 5,000 or greater. So that was kind of internally something we discussed as a threshold. So the remodel for the police department I mentioned earlier, the paint sprayer, which is if we can get that a nice piece of equipment, the better spray lines in the road and in parking lots. The big
Ball fields.
Yeah, it would do much nicer lines on it. And Public Works can use it on some of our town roads for, like with the stop bars and that. So that's at 12,000. The 55-gallon drum pump, this is the pump to more efficiently draw oil and other fluids, it's mostly oil, for oil changes for our fleet, where Public Works does maintenance at the building there. So it's a much more efficient way to do that. And then 2-post auto lift, which we talked about over there for maintenance at Public Works. And it's safer. There's the possum again. So you missed them. You want to open the door and get a picture?
It's gonna go back and climbed up the wall from the back, from the balcony,
It's,
yeah.
well, it's not good to see one in the middle of the day like that.
They say if they come out in the
They're good
day,
for
they're
you, though.
hungry,
Good for you.
or they got a
Don't
sick.
take him.
Or they're
home.
thirsty.
It's typically not.
Didn't work that out.
Just come out the day, they're just not playing loudness.
And then the last thing is the side-by-side or UTV for Parks and Rec at $16,500. So if you total all these things on the cash side here, projects, it's a little bit more than that, what 2 cents produces, because that's $384,784 is what 2 cents produces on the levy. So that total came over it by $2,716. We also have to bid a bunch of these things, so there'll be some variance. So there's more than enough space on the debt service, plus if we had to do the debt service payment for the truck, for the garbage truck. So that's the CIP. I don't know if there's any questions, comments, or.
I appreciate your hard work, both of you, all of you.
The whole crew.
Great job, yeah, great job.
Thanks.
Being creative with what
Yeah.
you're presented with.
Yeah, and department heads did a good job. Like I said, I normally don't let them know what's recommended in here until after I present it to you, because, I don't know, sometimes it just gets people worried about something, and y'all haven't had a chance to weigh in it too, because sometimes there's changes that come out of this budget workshop too, and I'd rather them know after that than before. And so, but because of the extent of the cuts we were looking, it was helpful to meet with them. People had a good attitude about it, but it also got good feedback that was helpful. Just there's things you just don't think about, or they might know more intricately
the cities about something. And in particular, the police department, public works, I got good, in Parks and Rec too. Actually, all of them, which help, I think, with the recommendations here in decision-making. So kudos to everyone. Heather did a lot of thoughts on this and breaking these out and the expense reductions into different sections. And so thank you to Christine facilitating everything here, doing a good job with that. Appreciate it at our meetings, the logistics. So unless there's any questions, that's kind of the conclusion of things. And I'll get the final values, like I said, and make some tweaks to revenues. And the other thing we do have it now, our premium for property and liability. So there'll be some adjustments to how we spread out the cost in there, but we just didn't have time to just so certainly else might be adjusted. I think that's it.
Was there anything from you?
Yeah, unless there's something burning desire or something you really don't like in there, tell us, so we can get in front of it sooner than later.
No, I'll just say really, again, well done job despite a really challenging budget. I mean, you all and department heads did a great job, Christine. So deeply appreciate y'all.
Yeah, thank you. So, again, another fast. We went a little bit longer than not too long. We had years ago where we were, it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe.
That's a day.
Oh, yeah, we came on a Saturday. We used to do this on a Saturday. It was more of like a retreat. And then kind of went away from it because it just kind of wasn't the necessity for it. So thanks for coming on a Thursday and not a Saturday, especially since a lot of y'all, I know are coming from jobs. So, gosh, everybody's still working. Even our one technically
Even though retired ones still.
is still got a side business going on now too. So.
Well, I'll say I've done some I remember doing a couple on Saturday. I'd much rather do it today than on my Saturday. Much rather.
Yeah.
I think you have too, yeah.
I remember coming on
I think we've done at least one
I think
on Saturday, yeah.
Yeah. So.
I'm glad I missed it.
Lucky you. All right then. Does anybody have any other business questions? Good. All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Okay, motion to adjourn, second.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We are adjourned.
Don't stand there.
Oh, by the way, Mark, I noticed on the hotel we were doing